I spent 6 years in prison for a crime I didn't commit because my dad told me to protect my brother. And when I came home, he looked right through me like I didn't exist. No, thank you. No apology. Just silence. Hi, I'm Elena, and I gave up everything for my family. But the day I walked out of prison, I realized I was never part of it to begin with. What would you do if your own father erased you to save your brother's future? Would you stay silent or fight back? Let me know in the comments, because some betrayals leave scars that prison never could. I didn't kill anyone. But the day I said I did, something inside me stopped breathing. It was one of those spring Sundays that smelled like freshly cut grass and charcoal. Mom had pulled out the big blue cooler from the garage, the one we only used when people outside the family were invited, but today it was just us. Dad manning the grill, Logan tossing a football in the yard with Uncle Frank, and me at the picnic table slicing watermelon. Lydia sat quietly near the patio steps, sipping sweet tea and watching everything like she always did. Half in, half out. I remember the paper plates wouldn't stop flying off the table. It was windy, but not enough to chill the air, just enough to keep things from settling. Dad's cologne cut through the smoky smell from the grill, sharp and spicy, the kind you didn't forget once you'd smelled it. He wore it only on Sundays or big meetings. I figured he was just staying in habit. Gerald Brooks didn't take a day off from being composed. "You still sending out those job applications?" he asked as he flipped a burger, not looking at me. "Yeah," I said, though it wasn't entirely true. After 27 unanswered emails, I'd stopped for a bit. "You should ask Logan to help you polish that resume. He's been doing great at the office." Logan smirked, standing nearby. "Yeah, I can take a look, if you don't mind constructive criticism." I nodded, trying to smile. Lydia's eyes met mine briefly, and for a second I thought she saw through the whole scene, but she didn't say anything. Later, while I was bringing plates inside, Logan's car pulled up the driveway again. He said he needed to grab something from the trunk. I caught a glimpse of his face as he walked toward the house. It was pale, and his jaw was tight. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine," he said quickly, brushing past me. But I saw his hands. They were shaking, and there was a fresh scrape on the bumper of his Camry. Before I could process it, the news alert flashed on the muted TV in the living room. A woman, mid-40s, had been killed in a hit-and-run a few blocks away. She had been jogging along Pine Hill Avenue, just a short turn from our neighborhood. They didn't have a suspect. That night, I couldn't sleep. I heard footsteps outside my room, then a gentle knock. Dad's kind of knock, not too hard, not too soft. He stepped inside, his tie gone but his shirt still tucked in. He closed the door slowly behind him and sat on the edge of my bed like he used to when I was a child, after nightmares. "Elena," he said, "I need to talk to you about something important." He smelled like bourbon and cologne, familiar, heavy. "There's a situation," he continued. "Logan, he made a mistake. A terrible one, but we can fix this." My stomach dropped. I didn't need to ask what he meant. "He came to me right after it happened," he said, voice calm, almost too calm. "He panicked, didn't know what to do, and now, well, the car's been wiped down. But if anyone connects the dots, it could ruin him. His future, his career, our name." "What are you saying?" I whispered. "I'm saying—" He paused, placing a hand on mine. "We need to keep this in the family, and you're the only one strong enough to carry it." I couldn't speak. My mind was a blizzard of soundless panic. "You're between jobs. You're not in the public eye. You can take this hit and bounce back," he added. "Logan, he's just getting started. We can't lose him now." "I didn't do anything," I said, voice cracking. "I know," he nodded, eyes softening like he was giving me some great gift. "That's what makes you the right person to do this. You're not a killer. You're a caretaker. You always have been." A part of me wanted to scream. Another part, an older part, trained since childhood to be the peacekeeper, just sat frozen. He leaned in. "It'll pass. You'll plead guilty. It'll be light. You're a first-time offender. No one got a good look. We'll get the best lawyer we can. You'll be out in no time. And this family, our family, will stay intact." I think I nodded. I'm not sure. But somehow, the next morning, I was sitting at a desk in a police station, my fingers wrapped tightly around a styrofoam cup of coffee I hadn't touched. A young officer led me to a back room. There was no camera, just a desk, a notepad, and the sour smell of old carpet. "Whenever you're ready, Ms. Brooks," he said kindly. I cleared my throat. My voice didn't feel like my own. "I was driving last night," I began, "around 8 p.m. I was on Pine Hill." I didn't see her. The words came out rehearsed, and they were. I'd said them over and over in my head all night. When it was time to sign the official statement, I picked up the pen. My hand trembled. The ink smudged slightly on the last letter of my name. Outside, Dad waited by the station steps. He wore his Sunday suit, the same cologne. He opened his arms as I approached. I let myself be hugged. "You did good, honey," he whispered into my hair. "You did right." But I couldn't breathe, not because his grip was tight, but because I'd just buried the truth with my own hands, and I wasn't sure it would ever see daylight again. They sentenced me to 6 years. No one told me silence would be the real prison. The first thing they took was my name. The second was my belt. After that, it all blurred. Paperwork, fingerprints, a cold metal bench that stuck to the back of my thighs, and a strip search that made me want to disappear into the floor. They gave me an orange jumpsuit 2 sizes too big and socks that didn't match. A woman named Officer Burns, tall with tired eyes, told me the rules without really looking at me. I was inmate number 4,537 by the time the door clanged shut behind me. North Carolina Women's Correctional was a flat beige building that looked more like an abandoned school than a prison. The walls hummed with fluorescent light that never quite turned off. The beds creaked with every shift. The air smelled like bleach and cold potatoes. My bunkmate, Monica Ruiz, introduced herself the next morning at roll call. She was short, with tight curls she'd cut herself using nail clippers. She called everyone sugar or baby, regardless of age. I didn't answer much at first, but she didn't seem to mind. "You've got quiet eyes," she said after a few days. "People with eyes like that either broke already or about to." I didn't know what to say. I just nodded. Most of the time, I stayed to myself, ate my bland cornbread and watery beans without speaking, walked the yard during free time, went to chapel, though I couldn't pray anymore. I was too ashamed to say anything to God. I wrote letters to Dad, to Logan, to Lydia. In each one, I asked how they were doing, even though I already knew the answer. Lydia was the only one who wrote back. Her notes were short and always handwritten in blue ink. "Thinking of you," or "Spring is coming early this year. The tulips are peeking up." Sometimes she tucked in a quote from a book. Never any gossip, never any updates about the others. I read her letters so many times that the paper began to tear at the fold lines. Dad and Logan never responded. Not once. I pictured them sitting at our old kitchen table, laughing over steak dinners, pouring wine, telling each other they did the right thing. I pictured Logan smoothing out the creases of a new suit, walking into the office like nothing ever happened. Monica must have noticed my silence deepening, because one day she dropped a book onto my bed without saying a word. The cover was worn, the spine cracked. To Kill a Mockingbird. "This helped me survive my first 2 years," she said. "Might do the same for you." I nodded again because words had become heavy things. I opened the book and tried to remember how to care about anything. On my 25th birthday, the cafeteria served gelatin cubes and rice casserole. A guard called my name after dinner. My heart jumped. Maybe someone had finally remembered. It was a card. No envelope. No decoration. Just "Happy Birthday" in script across the front. Inside, Lydia had written, "You are not what they say you are. You are who I know you to be. Love, always." I cried that night for the first time in months, not because of the card, but because of how rare kindness had become. It felt foreign, like rain in a place that had forgotten how to be wet. That's when I started writing letters to myself. Not on paper, they didn't allow that in our unit without approval, but in my head. Every night I'd close my eyes and write long, invisible paragraphs. I told myself what I remembered, what I was afraid of forgetting. I told myself what the food tasted like at home, what Dad's voice sounded like before it turned cold, how Mom used to braid my hair in silence. Sometimes I'd rewrite the day, pretend I had said no in that police station, that I had walked out and left them to deal with their own mess. Sometimes I'd just list all the people who hadn't called. On a Thursday afternoon in the prison library, a small room with more dust than books, I came across a local magazine, the kind left behind by a visiting chaplain. The front page had Logan's face on it. I froze. The headline read, "Logan Brooks, Charlotte's rising star in construction." There he was in a blazer and pressed shirt, arms crossed in front of our father's office building. The article praised his innovation, his work ethic, his dedication to the family business. No mention of what happened, no mention of me. My ears rang. I could barely breathe. I wanted to scream, but my throat stayed tight. I took the magazine back to the unit, folded it in half, and hid it under my pillow. That night, when the lights dimmed and the guards made their rounds, I took it to the bathroom stall, ripped it into small pieces, and flushed it, handful by handful. "You get your life, Logan," I whispered, watching the paper swirl and vanish. "I'll get mine, someday." I don't know if he ever thought about me, but in that moment I stopped thinking about him. They told me I was free, but no one was waiting outside the gate. The day I left prison, the sun was brighter than I remembered. It hurt my eyes. I squinted against it like it was a trick. No balloons, no hugs, just a cardboard box with my old clothes folded neatly inside, a prepaid bus ticket, and a stale sandwich wrapped in plastic. A guard handed it to me like it was supposed to mean something. "Take care," she said, like I was heading off to college. I nodded because what else do you do? The bus ride back to Charlotte took 3 hours, and I stared out the window the whole time, watching trees blur past like scenes from someone else's life. We passed a church with a faded sign that read, "Grace is still free." I laughed quietly. Monica would have liked that. No one met me at the station. I stood there with my box and my sandwich, blinking at the late summer heat. It was heavy like syrup in the air. People moved around me like I was invisible. Maybe I was. Then I heard my name. "Elena!" I turned and saw Lydia, my aunt, my lighthouse in all of this, waving from her old green Subaru. She hadn't changed much. Her gray curls were a little longer, and she wore the same denim blouse I remembered from Thanksgiving years ago. There were sunflowers on the passenger seat. "Hop in," she said, as casually as if she'd just picked me up from work. The car smelled like cinnamon and coffee. Safe. She didn't ask questions right away, and I was grateful. We drove in silence for a while. The trees along the highway started to look familiar. Old neighborhoods, school bus stops, even the bend where I learned to drive. The world had kept going. I had not. Her house sat on a quiet street lined with dogwoods just past the high school. The porch creaked under my feet as we stepped up. Inside, it was warm and smelled like beef stew. A candle flickered on the sideboard, sending the scent of baked apples into the air. I hadn't realized how much I missed smells. "Room's just like you left it," Lydia said, though I did toss the stuffed animals. "Hope that's all right." I managed a small smile. Probably for the best. Dinner was ready by 6. Frank, her husband, still slow-moving but kind, set the table. There was cornbread, real cornbread, not the dry prison kind that turned to paste in your mouth. I ate slowly, quietly, letting the flavors remind me what real food felt like. We didn't talk about prison. Not that night. The next morning, I dressed in a shirt Lydia had laid out and took the bus into town. I stopped by a temp agency first. The receptionist gave me a tight smile when I handed over my application. Any prior convictions? She asked, eyes not leaving her screen. Yes, I answered. Felony. Her fingers froze over the keyboard for half a second. Then she typed something, smiled again, tighter this time, and said, "We'll be in touch." They weren't. I filled out 6 more applications that week. Retail, cafes, administrative work, anything. Each one ended the same, silence or an apology, laced with something more bitter than rejection. At night, I walked. The streets of Charlotte were still buzzing with late summer energy. Couples eating outdoors, kids riding bikes, music spilling out of bars. I walked past houses I used to know. I passed my old elementary school, the ice cream shop we used to go to after church. The memories hit like raindrops. Not painful, just persistent. One night, I found myself outside the old family home. It was painted a brighter shade now, but the mailbox still read Brooks in metal letters. Through the front window, I saw Logan. He was sitting at the dining room table laughing with his wife. A little boy, no more than 3, ran into the room, and Logan scooped him up with ease. My nephew, a child I had never met. There was light. There was warmth. There was a life that had gone on without me. I turned and walked away. 2 days later, at the grocery store, I reached for a jar of marinara sauce and bumped into someone reaching for the same. Elena? I knew that voice. It was sharper now, more guarded. My father. He wore a pressed dress shirt and khakis, like always. His watch gleamed under the fluorescent lights. We stood there, inches apart. "Dad," I said quietly. He blinked, as if surprised I was still real. He didn't speak, didn't smile, just nodded once and walked away, leaving his cart behind. I stood frozen in the aisle holding the sauce like it weighed 100 pounds. That night, I came home and found Lydia in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. The smell of rosemary and chicken filled the air. I dropped my purse on the chair and sat down hard. "They buried me alive," I said, shaking, "but I'm still here." Lydia didn't flinch. She stirred once more, turned off the heat, and reached into the drawer. She pulled out a business card and handed it to me. Naomi Fields, legal aid. "She helped someone I used to counsel," Lydia said gently. "Smart woman. Tough. You should talk to her." I looked at the card. The letters blurred slightly from my grip. I didn't know what I was going to say to Naomi, but I knew I was done being quiet. "I will," I said. "If the past won't let go of me, then I won't let go of it either." I held the business card Lydia gave me for 3 days before I called. I turned it over in my hand so many times that the corners frayed. Naomi Fields, legal aid. Her number was written in ink that had started to fade, but the name stayed bold. When I finally dialed, I didn't expect her to answer. I figured I'd get an assistant or a voicemail, but her voice came through the line. Low, measured, and very awake, even at 7:43 a.m. "This is Naomi." I opened my mouth and nothing came out for a second. "My name is Elena Brooks," I said quietly. I was told you might be able to help me." She didn't rush me. She just asked if I could come by her office that afternoon. It wasn't the kind of law office I'd expected. No mahogany desks or gold lettering. Just a repurposed firehouse near the edge of downtown, with exposed brick, mismatched chairs, and a steady hum of keyboards in the background. A cat slept under the receptionist's desk. The moment Naomi walked out to greet me, I noticed her boots, scuffed, worn, solid. She wore a blazer over a black t-shirt, no jewelry, no flair. Her eyes were sharp, but not unkind. "Elena?" she asked. "Yes. Come on back." Her office smelled like coffee and dust and something warm I couldn't name. The Keurig in the corner had just finished brewing. She gestured toward a chair but didn't sit down right away. "Tea or coffee?" "Tea," I said. She handed me a chipped mug, mint green with a tiny crack near the handle, and sat across from me at the desk. "You want to start from the beginning?" she asked. So I did. I told her about the barbecue, the news report, the blood on Logan's bumper, Dad's voice in my ear telling me I was strong enough to carry it. I told her about the police station, the statement I memorized like a school recital, the way Dad hugged me afterward like I'd done something noble. She didn't write anything down at first, just listened and nodded. When I got to the part about prison, about the letters that never came, about seeing Logan's face in a magazine while I flushed my own life down the toilet, her jaw tightened, ever so slightly. "I want to fix it," I said finally. "I don't know what that looks like, but I want to try." Naomi leaned forward, resting her elbows on the desk. "Do you still have a copy of the confession?" "Yes," I said. "They gave it back when I was released." "Bring it tomorrow," she said, "and we'll go over it line by line." Lydia drove me back home. I didn't say much, and she didn't push. The next day, I walked back into Naomi's office with a folder under my arm. It had been sealed for years. My hands shook slightly as I opened it. Naomi scanned the first page quickly, then slowed down. "They didn't perform any forensic analysis?" she asked, frowning. "No vehicle inspection? No blood evidence submitted?" "Not that I know of," I said. Her eyes narrowed. "That's unusual." She flipped a few more pages. "Your statement says you were alone, but your own report says you were crying and disoriented. Yet no one tested your sobriety? No. No talk screen?" I shook my head. She exhaled and leaned back. "That's more than unusual. That's negligent." My heart pounded. We spent the next hour combing through every word of my statement. Naomi highlighted phrases, circled inconsistencies, and asked questions I'd never thought to ask. When I told her about Logan's hoodie, the one I saw him shove into the trash that night, she paused. "Did anyone ever collect it?" "No," I said. "It was gone by morning." She made a note. Then she stood and walked over to a filing cabinet. "There was an officer on the original scene," she murmured, flipping through folders. "Jensen, I remember that name. He retired a couple years back, but I had a case cross his desk once." She pulled out a thick manila folder, rifled through it, and then held up a sheet of paper. "Here." She scanned it. "Call report log. Officer Jensen was first on site but was replaced before taking a formal statement. That's odd." She picked up her phone and dialed. "Charlotte PD Records Department, please." "Yes, this is Attorney Naomi Fields, badge 1126. I'm requesting access to archived internal notes from incident number 1, 762-C, dated April 16, 2017. She turned her back slightly, scribbling as she spoke. When she hung up, she looked at me with a glint I hadn't seen before. "If we're lucky, they'll still have it." We weren't lucky. We were blessed. 2 days later, I walked back into her office and found Naomi already flipping through a document. She looked up, eyes serious. "Look at this." She handed me the page. At the bottom of a paragraph, nearly buried in handwriting, was a line. "Uncooperative male present at scene. Refused to give name. Matched vehicle description." My breath caught. "That's Logan," I whispered. "It has to be." Naomi nodded. "This note was never included in the official documentation submitted during your hearing, which means we have potential grounds for suppression, or worse, misconduct." I stared at the paper, the words blurred and sharpened all at once. "This won't undo what happened," she said, sliding the page toward me again, "but it's a crack in their story." I didn't blink. "Then let's break it wide open." Truth doesn't scream. It waits. Quiet, patient, like a fuse. Naomi said we'd have to move carefully. "The legal system doesn't reward noise," she told me. "It rewards pressure. Consistent, quiet pressure." Still, I was ready to shout. We started with Officer Jensen. He ate breakfast every morning at a diner off Route 74. Same corner booth, same black coffee, same routine according to Naomi's contact. She didn't tell me how she knew that, and I didn't ask. Some things are better when you don't look too closely at the edges. The place was dim and smelled like fried eggs and cigarette smoke, even though smoking wasn't allowed anymore. Jensen was already seated when we walked in, his face half hidden behind a newspaper. He looked up when we approached. "Mr. Jensen," Naomi greeted him politely, I'm Naomi Fields, attorney. This is my client, Elena Brooks. His eyes flicked to me, and I saw the recognition hit like a slow blink. I figured this day might come, he said, folding the newspaper and setting it aside. He didn't deny anything. Not right away. He stirred his coffee, took a sip, and stared out the window like he was waiting for traffic to forgive him for something. I remember the scene, he said finally. The girl was already gone when I got there. 2 neighbors called it in. A man was nearby, shaking, wouldn't talk, wouldn't give a name. I wrote that down. And, Naomi prompted gently, I passed it on. Chain of command took it from there. But your notes never made it into the court file, I said. He winced. Your father called me that night, he said. Told me you were fragile. Said Logan had nothing to do with it. Said it was a misunderstanding. Asked if we could keep things simple. Did he pay you? Naomi asked. No, Jensen said quickly. It wasn't like that. It was reputation, favor trading. You understand? I didn't. Not really. But I didn't say that out loud. He reached for his check, scrawled a tip that was bigger than necessary, and stood. You deserved better, he said, looking me square in the face for the first time. I'm sorry. It didn't feel like enough, but it was something. Later that afternoon, Naomi filed a Freedom of Information Act request with the city. She made 2 phone calls, filled out 3 forms, and waited. While she worked, I sat on a faded blue couch in the corner of the office and listened to the sound of a ceiling fan wobbling above us. I'd started leaving voice memos to myself on Lydia's old iPhone. It was a way to get the thoughts out without putting them on paper, a soft confession between me and whatever cloud held digital memory. This is Elena, I whispered that night, standing in the kitchen while Lydia and Frank watched Jeopardy in the next room. And I saw my brother the night it happened. He was sweating and shaking, and he threw his hoodie in the trash. And I said nothing. But I remember. I saved the memo. I didn't listen to it. A few days later, Naomi called. They released a clip, she said, from a traffic cam near the intersection. I met her at the office. She hit play. The footage was grainy, just headlights and blurred outlines, but there it was. Logan's car, unmistakable, turning onto Pine Hill Avenue at 8:16 p.m. My statement had said 7:45. Logan wasn't supposed to be near that street at all. We sat in silence for a long minute after. That's enough to raise doubt, Naomi said, and doubt can open a case. We added the clip to the folder. The folder had gotten thick. I kept leaving memos, shorter ones, more direct. My father didn't hug me after the trial. He hugged the lie. At the pharmacy the next morning, I bumped into someone unexpected, Logan's wife. She was pushing a cart with a toddler inside, my nephew again, chubby legs swinging, cheeks round and pink. He was holding a box of crackers and humming to himself. Elena? She asked. Her voice was softer than I remembered. I hadn't seen her since before everything. I didn't know you were back in town. I am, I said, living with Lydia. She nodded, adjusting the strap of her purse. Her eyes dropped to the floor, then back to mine. He told me you volunteered, she said finally, that you owed him. My mouth went dry. He said you did it for the family. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She cleared her throat. I never knew for sure, but I wondered. I gave her a small nod. That was all I had in me. Later that week, Naomi prepared the formal request to the state for post-conviction review. It was a thick packet filled with exhibits, timestamps, affidavits, and arguments. She double-checked every word. We printed 5 copies. This will trigger a review process, she said. They'll assign a review attorney, maybe a judge if it passes first stage. We'll need to be ready to speak. I'm ready, I said. That night, as I walked home, the fall air felt sharper. Leaves crunched beneath my sneakers. The city didn't feel like home yet, but it no longer felt like a cage either. When I got back to Lydia's, Frank handed me a manila envelope. "This came for you," he said. I opened it and saw a single sheet of paper, an email printout from Gerald Brooks, attorney subject, request for private conversation. Mr. Brooks wishes to speak with your client privately. My heart knocked hard once in my chest. I looked up at Lydia, then Naomi, who had just arrived. "Well," Naomi said, eyebrows lifting, "we have their attention." I carried that name like armor. Turns out it was a leash. The law office conference room was the kind of place where people didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't show anything they couldn't file or notarize. The walls were a shade between beige and off-white, the kind of neutral you use when you're trying not to offend anyone. It smelled like printer ink and lemon cleaner. My father sat across from me in a suit I hadn't seen in years, navy, well-tailored, with the Brooks construction lapel pin glinting on his jacket. He looked smaller than I remembered, or maybe I'd just finally outgrown the version of him I used to fear. Beside me, Naomi adjusted her files without saying a word. She knew this wasn't a negotiation. Not really. Gerald cleared his throat and leaned forward. "Elena," he began, his voice low, composed. "This doesn't need to get messy. We're willing to offer a private settlement, a formal statement of regret. Nothing public, no court filings." He pushed a folder toward me. Inside was a typed agreement, 2 copies neatly formatted. I recognized his lawyer's stationery. "There's also a non-disclosure clause," he added casually, like we were reviewing restaurant options. "Standard stuff. You get peace, we get closure." I stared at the folder. I didn't open it. Naomi stayed quiet. This was my moment. "I made one sacrifice," I said evenly. 6 years of my life. I won't make another." He exhaled through his nose. "You're angry. I understand that. But this isn't the way—" "No," I interrupted. "You don't understand anything." His jaw tightened. "You stood on the courthouse steps and told reporters I needed help, that I had emotional instability. You let them write that narrative. You let Logan move into my life like I never existed." "I protected our name," he said sharply, finally losing some of that polish. "And I'm reclaiming mine," I replied. "You don't get to decide what my name stands for anymore." Naomi closed the folder and handed it back. "We'll see you in court," she said quietly. My father rose, buttoned his jacket, and gave me a long, cold stare. I held it. That evening, I sat in a folding chair at the Charlotte Public Library, palms damp, back straight. A small banner read, "Voices of Justice, Personal Testimonies on the System." There were maybe 50 people in the audience, students, advocates, retirees, and a few men and women I guessed had worn orange jumpsuits once, like I had. Lydia sat in the second row. She wore a lavender cardigan and clasped her hands together like she was trying not to cry before I even started. Naomi stood in the back, arms folded, nodding gently to people as they entered. When it was my turn, I walked up to the podium. My shoes made no sound on the carpet. The mic was a little too high. I adjusted it. "My name is Elena Brooks," I began, and for 6 years, that name was associated with guilt, with silence, with something I didn't do. I paused. I confessed to a crime I didn't commit. I went to prison. I lived behind bars while the people who put me there got promotions, Christmas photos, retirement parties. No one coughed. No one shifted. They listened. I believed my silence was strength, that if I stayed quiet, I could keep everything from falling apart. But things still fell, just not around them, around me. I took a deep breath. They told me family came first, but they meant their version of family, the one where truth takes a back seat to image, where women carry the shame and men carry the narrative. The lights were warm. My voice didn't shake. I carried the Brooks name like armor. I thought it protected me, but it was a leash, and tonight I'm cutting it loose. The applause was soft at first, then stronger, a rising wave, not thunderous, but real. After the event, a young woman approached. She couldn't have been more than 25, clutching a spiral notebook to her chest. "Hi," she said. I wanted to say thank you for sharing that, and I was wondering, would it be okay if I emailed you? I think I'm ready to tell my story too." I smiled, something real cracking through the quiet I'd worn for years. "Start tonight," I said. In the weeks that followed, the world didn't change overnight, but some things did. A reporter picked up my story and asked to interview me for a feature on wrongful confessions. Logan stepped down from Brooks Construction, citing personal restructuring. My father withdrew from public life. Board seats were given to other people whose names hadn't burned others on the way up. Naomi stayed in touch. So did some of the people from the panel. I even got a letter from Monica, handwritten, full of sarcasm and strength. But the biggest change was quieter. I began walking home a different way, not to avoid anything, but to see it clearly. One night I passed a storefront with wide windows, clean glass, nothing fancy. I caught my reflection. For the first time in years, I didn't look away. I saw my face, my posture, my name, and I thought, this is mine, finally, fully mine. Sometimes I walk past that same window downtown and catch my reflection. I still carry the same name, but now it's not theirs to define. What I've learned is simple. Family can shape us, but it doesn't get to silence us. Telling the truth, especially when it's uncomfortable, isn't betrayal. It's freedom. And healing begins the moment we stop apologizing for surviving. If this story touched something in you, I'd be honored to hear what it stirred. You're not alone, and it's never too late to reclaim your own name, too.